on the Triple E PLN site where you can evaluate your lessons using Triple E. Again, you can go through this in a couple different places, even just on the Triple E website where you can fill out the reflection tool and rubric about lessons. But I thought I'd go in and show you what in the PLN looks like. And under evaluate, you can evaluate your lesson using Triple E, which is really nice. And so I've chose a lesson we do with intro to education students, whether elementary ed or folks doing our the secondary ed intro course as well. We have an activity. It's a breakout EDU activity that we use the last couple years, and we call it a tour of what's possible. Because Ball State doesn't have a required ed tech course, it's a way of introducing not only the concept of technology integration, but also we try to model what integration could look like in a learning activity. And so, again, as we've been talking about with Triple E, the framework is on the learning, and so our learning goal for this activity is really to help these new pre-service teachers think about technology integration and how that will look different maybe than their own prior experiences with that. And so we do this breakout EDU as a way to model this for students, because in the beginning of the activity we typically ask them, and it's usually been pretty standard. They write papers, they do PowerPoint presentations, something that technology has always been an add-on to what they've done in classes. They haven't really thought about it as an integrated, embedded part of a teacher's instructional practices. And so we try to model that for them in this activity. And so this is just on the form, again, at the Triple E PLN site. Again, if you haven't joined this, it's free. And you can get into here. And then just title it, or title is EdTech Tour What's Possible. Some specific or learning goals here. Again, problem solving, collaborating, modeling, technology integration itself. Under subjects, and this is where I need to write to Dr. Kolb. It just kind of has a drop down menu of different content areas. I just put this under computer science and technology for now. But under grade level, again, her focus is primarily K through 12, so it tops out at 12. So I just marked it there instead of she could maybe have another category there within teacher education possibly. And then some different technologies that we use in this activity. We use Google Forms, QR codes. Again, it's a breakout activity, so there are some non-digital technologies involved here as well. Other tools could be either personal phones, devices, or iPads. I should probably put that in here, so I'll do that real quick. That they use either to complete the form or things like that. I'll upload the complete lesson plan. I'll see if this lets me do this or not, to a URL or it could be a PDF file. And under description, I've just gone ahead and written in here, and this unfortunately doesn't expand, so I did it in a Word document and just copy and pasted. There's a brief description about what the activity is, what happens during that breakout EDU, and then again, the second point here is a description of how technology is integrated to meet the learning goals. And so I've taught this several different times over the last couple of years to these intro courses, and then it asks about modifications here as well. And so here we used Erasma initially, and Erasma went away. It was purchased by another company, and so now we've just been using QR codes. But here's the real power of this. So in this evaluation tool, we can look at it again in terms of engagement, enhancement, and extension. And so just using the engagement, I'm going to do this as kind of a personal evaluation here of this, but others can evaluate it too. It allows for students to focus on the assignment with less distraction. I would argue yes, we do that because they need to use the technology in order to complete the tasks that they're going through in the breakout EDU activity. There's a lot of puzzles to solve, and they have to collaborate with one another in their teams and as a whole actually to eventually open up the breakout EDU box. And so they use technologies as a part of that. And does it motivate students to start the learning process? Here too, I would argue yes, primarily because again, they're using their personal devices. Oftentimes they've never been asked to use their personal devices in any kind of learning situation. So they're using their personal phones to then scan these QR codes. It's pretty motivational for students. It's an active activity, and so students are up and moving around. It's not a passive sit and get kind of thing. And again, it kind of speaks to this next one. Technology causes a shift in behavior of the students from passive to active learners. Again, they had to actively move around the room to go to these different posters to scan the QR codes to learn a little bit more about different technologies and how they're being used in K-12 classrooms. So, for example, digital storytelling in the classroom, and so they scan some QR codes of examples of different digital stories that students have created to demonstrate what they know. Or they go to a coding in the classroom poster, and it has some examples of how coding is being used in elementary classrooms. And so put that, and I'm getting kind of talking through my evidence here, but I could also point to these things here with that. Under enhancement for the learning goals, technology tools allow students to be able to develop or demonstrate more sophisticated understanding of learning goals or content. Here too, I would argue yes to this. Again, at the beginning of this activity, the students are asked, how have they used technology in their own learning as K-12 students or even as university students. And oftentimes they described very passive use of that technology, not being really used to create something new with it or to use it to help them broaden their thinking about something. So in this activity, they're being asked to go to these posters, scan these QR codes, learn something more about how that technology is being used in K-12, but then also they're being asked to consider within their own classroom, their own grade level they plan on teaching, or the content they plan on teaching, how these technologies might work for them. And so when they come back together, they share what their thinking has been over the course of that time as they visited these different examples, and then share that with their teammates, and then they have to complete a Google form where that information is shared and all put down into the form. But then when they submit that, it goes to the instructor to learn more about what the students thought. And so, excuse me, it creates in the reflection after the breakout EDU, the debriefing that we do, we ask students, how did you use technology? How would it support your learning? And they always say, oh, I didn't realize we, for example, used the Google form to share that with a faculty member so that they could plan for future activities or to share our ideas, because the faculty member never got a chance to really sit and discuss that with us. It's a way for them to share that information as a form of assessment for the faculty member as well. Anyway, so the teacher creates support scaffolds, make it easier to understand the concepts and topics. Again, I would say yes to that. The technology creates paths for students to demonstrate their understanding of learning in ways that they could not do with traditional tools. Now, we could have just had a large group discussion about this. They could have went and visited, but by playing the breakout EDU game, they're able to demonstrate that learning in some different ways that, I don't know, I'm going to say somewhat to this one. I tend to say yes to this, but I want to say that we could have done it in a more traditional way. It wouldn't have been as efficient and or engaging, going back to that engagement part of the tool here. But we'll leave it at that. Extend it, and again, a place I could put additional reasoning here for my score. Extending the learning goals. So here, does it create opportunities for students to learn outside of the typical school day? I'm going to say yes, because when we do these activities, we invite the students to come back to our NEST learning labs to explore the different technologies themselves. It's open, available to students if they wanted to try to 3D print something or experiment with some of the different VR software, or try it out because they've never done it in a learning situation. They have opportunities to come outside of that one class setting. Excuse me, that creates a bridge between student school learning and their everyday life experiences. Here too, because this is kind of focused, I'm going to say somewhat on here, oftentimes learning that our pre-service teachers are doing they're getting a lot of information also from external sources like Pinterest or YouTube and things like that. But this creates an opportunity for them to connect directly to our instructional goals for them, to think about creative lesson planning and how to engage students in the learning process themselves. And so it's a nice bridge for them within the class setting to think about their eventual, you know, practicum experience or student teaching experiences. I guess that would count as everyday life experiences, but it's also an opportunity for them to think about their future and using it in their future classes. Technology allows students to build an authentic life skill which they can use in their everyday lives. Here again, I'm going to say yes to this one because, again, what we try to model here is then oftentimes followed up by that instructor where they have the class come back for a second time when the students identified 3 of the different technologies. We then have a more hands-on session with them to talk and work with them more in depth about how these different technologies they've identified can be used within that grade level or content area. So anyway, I've kind of verbalized my descriptions here of reasons for the score. If I go ahead and submit this, then it shows me here's my lesson, here's kind of the write-up for it. It's kind of long, those descriptions, but I ultimately have a score here of 16. This is again how I'm kind of scoring it. It's available for others to critique as well, and there it is. And so it kind of gives me this overall score and description about it. Again, if I was doing this as part of an assignment, for example, I would put this additional reasoning evidence into this. I kind of verbalize this for a screencast here. But there we go, and it should be saved, I would think, within the stuff here. So if I go back to edit, it comes back to there, and if I can submit, there it is. And so I'm not sure why the delete is there, but anyway, it's in there, and just a quick little tour of what's possible using the Triple E evaluation. Kind of again, you can see the way that's kind of works itself out under engagement, enhancement, and extension, and then total score if you want to use this as. But it also, again, there's the other tool available just at the Triple E homepage where you can go there as well. All right, thanks for listening.